Okay, good morning everyone. We're continuing with our shiur on navigating the Sidur, and we are holding now by the Birkat HaShachar, the blessing of the morning. We covered Modeh Ani, Elokai Neshama. We covered the concept of the appreciation of both the creation of soul, the creation of body, and the entrance of the soul in the body that animates and is the main dimension of the body. Now we are holding by the next dimension in our prayers, and the next dimension really in the service of God. And that is Birkat HaShachar, where we thank God for the individual or specific functions of the body. Why do we do that? Firstly, to recognize and appreciate the miracles that God bestows upon us, because unfortunately we do take things for granted. We take things for granted, the fact that we are able to see, that we're able to wake up in the morning, that we're able to see, that we're able to move our limbs, we're able to stand up and walk, etc. But on a deeper level, it is the concept of being productive. The Gemara tells us that sleep is good for the wicked and good for the world. Why is sleep good for the wicked and good for the world? Because the wicked sin, the wicked destroy the world, and when they're sleeping, they're not involved in destroying their own lives, they're not involved in destroying the world. So good, sleep as long as you can. But for the righteous, wakefulness is good for them and good for the world because they are being productive. This is the beginning now of the concept of appreciating the ability to be productive upon our wakefulness. And that is all of the details of the movements of the body, the functions of the body, and how we can then recognize the Almighty within that, within the function of the world. But before we get to that, there are 18 blessings of Birkat HaShachar, which is interesting. The number 18, of course, is a very Jewish number. The number high, right? Everybody thinks high is a good number, right? When you go up to the Torah, you say, how much did you donate? High, dollar. High meaning life. Beautiful. But the number 18 is a much deeper concept than that. In fact, we find that the sages instituted 18 brachot of the Amidah. The Amidah being the main part of the prayers, and everything of the beginning of the prayers until the Amidah is a build-up to that, as we learned before in our introduction to prayers, that the Amidah represents the world of Atzilut, the highest world. The world by which we, so to speak, stand before the King of all kings, the Almighty, in absolute submission and absolute nullification of self, and where our highest self is revealed, and the lower self becomes subordinate and nullified before that. So the whole concept of our prayers is to lift ourselves up, like the dream of Yaakov. He saw the ladder, and the ladder is climbing up step by step. And as we mentioned before, the Midrash tells us that there were 4 rungs corresponding to the 4 parts of the prayer. The highest concept of the prayer, the build-up to all of our prayers, is the Amidah. The Amidah has 18 blessings. The number 18 is extremely significant, and although one blessing was later on added because of the increase of dissenters or non-believers that caused a lot of havoc to the Jews who were living in the land of Israel at the time, the people who are kofrim, the people who were non-believers. However, the basic construct is that of 18. Why 18? We also, interestingly enough, find that there are 18 Birkat HaShachar. There are 18 blessings of the Shachar. Seemingly now that there is now a correspondence between these 18 and the 18 of the Amidah, seemingly there is a correspondence between the beginning of the prayers and the essence or the apex of the prayers, the Amidah. And how can that be? Here we are beginning our day, and that is just beginning of our prayers. We haven't even put on talit and tefillin on, and here this is the essence of our prayer. How can that be? First of all, let's analyze the number 18. We will understand that the number 18 is a very significant number. What indeed is the number 18? When we say a blessing, we learned before in the previous shurim, the essence of a blessing is to reveal godliness. Baruch, the word Baruch, as we explained in previous shurim, Baruch is the concept of revealing godliness, drawing godliness down. Ata, you, In other words, the essence of God, which is higher than a name, and then the name of God. The name, the Tetragrammaton name, is the highest form, the essence of the highest name, of which that represents the essence of all creative functions. Everything stems from that name. Havaya, the name Havaya, the Tetragrammaton name, is a name that not only creates the world, but actually brings existence into being. And the Kabbalist still tells us that everything starts from that name, and that name really represents the four worlds. The four letters correspond to the four worlds, and many other things and many other correspondence as well. So the objective of all blessings is to reveal godliness in the world. That He is the Melech HaOlam, He is the King of this world. And we recognize this, we understand this. The Kabbalists teach us that the Tetragrammaton name, the name Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, has a different form of being spelt as well. What's called Milui. Milui means when the letters are filled. When the letters are, each letter is spelt in its full dimension. And there are a few ways by which, generally four, by which the name of God is spelt in its full dimension. The Kabbalists tell us that they are what's called Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ben. Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ben. Mendel's an expert in Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ben. Kabbalists call it in short Asmab. Is the numerical value of those names as they are spelt in full, and I will explain in a minute. Ab is Ayin Bet, is 72. Sag is Samech Gimel, is 63. Ma is 45. And Ben is 52. They correspond to the four worlds, and they correspond to the four divisions of the 10 emanations of God. The 10 emanations of God are divided into four groups. That is the highest dimension, that is the intellect. Then, like a human being is split into four, so too we are created in the image, so to speak, of God. The highest level is also split into four dimensions of the 10 emanations. And they are intellect, that is Chokhmah, Binah, Vedat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Then, and that corresponds to the head. Then there is Hesed, Gvura, Tiferet, and that is the right and the left, kindness and judgment, what's right, etc. So that's a category for itself. And Tiferet, beauty and splendor, the unity of the two. And Netzach, Hod, Yisod, the feet and the genitals, and which correspond to an extension of the body, the lower part. In other words, here you have the head, and here you have the torso, the hands, then you have the feet, and then you have the next part that extends over the genitals that represents the continuity, the bringing of children to the world, the next level down, in other words, drawing it down to the lower level, and that is then on the same level, on par with the feet. And so therefore these four names correspond to the way the divinity, the divine, must draw itself down, or that we draw godliness down to the world, in the world, and even to the lowest of level. And they are reflected in the four ways of spelling of God. I'm only going to concentrate on one today. And that is the highest, and that is Ayin Bet, what's called Ab, which is the numerical value of 72. That is the highest form, and the reason why it's the highest form, the most fullest of the energy of the divine, because it is full of the letter Yud. It's spelled with the letter Yud more so than all of the other divine names. How is this name spelled? Well, let's take the four letters, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. How do you spell? So these are the four letters. Now, each letter in itself is a letter in itself, and it's spelt in a way that you will pronounce it. So the letter Yud, now we just write the letter Yud, but the letter Yud is to pronounce the letter Yud. We identify the letter Yud, and that's how we pronounce it. But the letter Yud is actually fullness of the letter Yud itself is the way it's spelt and pronounced, and that is Yud, Vav, and Dalet. That's the letter Yud. That's its complete form. So therefore, the full name of God is the way each letter is spelt in full. There are 4 general ways how they are spelled. There are more, but there are 4 general ways. They are the 4 general ways corresponding to the 10 emanations split into 4 groups, as we said. And Malchut, kingdom, being the transmitter or the bridge between one level and the next, is those correspondence of the 4. So basically we have the Yud, that is the intellectual, the Vav, that is the emotional, the Vav drawing down, the Hey, the Yud is Chokhmah, the Hey is Binah. So those 2 letters correspond to the intellectual, and they correspond to the world Yud Atzilut. Hey is the world of Bria, the world of creation. Now the letter Vav is drawing down further down, and that is the world of Yetzirah, and that is emotions. The 6 emotions. The letter Vav is 6, there's 6 emotions. And then there's the last Hey, and that is, the last Hey corresponds to Malchut, which is an expansion, which is expanding all of the 10 emanations and bringing it down to the next level, or the material world, the physical world, and that is the world of Asiya, this physical world. They are the 4 names, and then they correspond in smaller fashion. They are the 4 letters, but in a more broader way, they are the way the names are spelled in full. The highest, which represents Chokhmah, the highest, for everything starts with Chokhmah, everything starts with our wisdom. That is signified or expressed through the letter Yud, and on a more expanded way, that is the name of God in its full form, as is spelled with the numerical value of 72. How is that spelled? So the letter Yud in its full form is Yud, Vav, and Dalet. That's 20. Hey is, now Hey can be spelled in different ways. Hey can be spelled Hey, Hey, Hey Yud, or Hey Aleph. Hey here in this name is spelled Hey and Yud. Again, with the fullness, with the Yud being Chokhmah. So this name is impregnated with or is symbolic of the highest form of godliness, and that is from the very first emanation being Chokhmah, being wisdom. For everything starts with wisdom. Everything starts with wisdom. Understanding. If there's no wisdom, there's no understanding. And if there's no understanding, there's no emotions. And if there's no emotions, there's no transmission of the emotions, etc. Correct? So therefore everything starts with Chokhmah. Kulam bechokhmah asita. Everything, God, you created through wisdom. Wisdom is the beginning of everything. So that is the highest form of godly revelation that we want to draw down. So we have Yud. And now we have Hey, Hey, and Yud. How much does that equal? 15. So 15 plus 20 equals 35. Then we have Vav. Here Vav is spelled Vav, Yud, and Vav. Vav could be spelled in 3 forms. Vav, Aleph, Vav, Vav, Yud, Vav, and Vav, Vav. To get the name, the fullness of the letter Vav. Here it's spelled Vav, Yud, Vav, which is the more complete form, or the highest form of that spelling, again indicating that name symbolizes the most concentrated form of godliness, and the most powerful form of godliness, and that is with God's wisdom, or the first emanation of the 10 emanations, the 10 Sefirot. And then we have the last letter Hey, Hey, and Yud. Altogether, this is 72. So that name is the highest name that represents the beginning of all of creation. All of creation begins from there. All revelation begins from there, to a certain degree. Now, if we take the 4 letters of God's name, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which are the more condensed form of the Tetragrammaton, not the fuller form, and you times it by 18, how many do you get? What do you get? What number do you get? Who's good at math? 18 times 4. 72. Very good. So here you see the significance of the number 18. The number 18, when it is incorporated with the name of God, of which there are 18 blessings, each blessing we are revealing a different dimension of godliness, or recognizing a different dimension of godliness. So 18 different blessings of the name of God, 18 times 4 letters of the name of God, equals 72. So here we see why the sages specifically instituted 18 blessings, because 18 blessings correspond to the highest form, or at least hint to us, symbolizes the highest form of the divine revelation, which is our objective, to take the highest level of godliness and reveal it even in this most physical world, in our most personal aspects of our living, of our lives. Not only just in the synagogue, not only when we put on tefillin, when we wake up in the morning, every dimension of self. And we will elaborate on that a little bit later. The number 18, we see this a few times because we see it in Yehi Chavod, we see it in the 18 blessings here. We see it in Yehi Chavod, the Sukkot de Zimra, one of the main chapters of exalting God. We see it as well in Shirat Hayam, in the Song of the Sea, which has sublime connotation and symbolism of opening up the hidden worlds and revealing it. That we have 18 times the name of God mentioned in those verses. Again, 18 times you find the name of God. And then you find again the 18 times the name of God also in the Shema Yisrael, the recitation of the Shema with its blessings. And then you have 18 times again in the Amidah, in the Shemona Yisrael. And then you have 18 times again in the Uva Letzion that we say later on we will learn. Uva Letzion is almost like the sealing of the Amidah, where we ask Hashem to accept all of our prayers, etc. And is drawing down godliness, we find, at least according to some customs, because there's sometimes different verses, which we say in Uva Letzion, there are 18 times the name of God there again. So we see again the concept of 18 mentions of the name of God, and each letter of God is 4, hints to us again the highest form of revelation of that name of God that represents the energy of creation, which is our objective as human beings. What is the relevance between the blessings, the 18 blessings that we recite, to the Amidah? The Amidah is, we stand still and we stand like we're standing in front of the king with total nullification. How can we compare the blessing that we just barely woke up in the morning, we just scratching the sleep of our eyes, and who can barely collecting our thoughts, to standing before the king in the Amidah, where we took preparation and we went through all of the prayers, we got the tefillin on, etc. And we're standing before the king. How can you possibly compare? The answer is that there are 2 dimensions. There are 2 dimensions in this revelation. There is a dimension by which is called Itaruta de Le'ela, or Hamshacha Milemala Lemata. Itaruta de Le'el means an arousal from above, the act of the divine kindness that is given for no other reason besides an expression of the divine kindness. And then there is this dimension of what's called and drawing down the divine from God's initiative, without our own initiative, without us owning it or doing much to bring it down. And that could be compared to Yetziat Mitzrayim, the going out of Egypt. Here, night is a symbol of exile, a symbol of concealment of godliness. And therefore, we are now in the morning at the break of day, where godliness is penetrating to the world, beginning to be revealed itself into the world, because day is a symbol of clarity. And where do you get clarity if not through godliness, where there's a revelation of godliness? Where there is no godliness, no revelation of godliness, there's no clarity, there is confusion, and thus doubt, and thus following our impulses and not following the path that God has prepared for us, so to speak. The difference between night and day, knowledge and ignorance, spiritual and impure. This is compared to going out of Egypt, where we're going out of Egypt. Night was a time where we were sleeping, where we were told our functions were not revealed at all. We were in the state of dreaming, not proper function. The Jewish people in Egypt, like it says, David HaMelech says in regards to exile, Hayinu keholmim, we were like dreamers. What's dreamers? Dreamers means it's not real. It's not the reality. You think you're on the plane, you think you're under this, but you're only dreaming. You think that someone's running after you, but you're only dreaming. It's not real, it's not reality. But when you're dreaming it, it's absolute. So too, when we go through exile, we think that the conditions of exile are the reality. Godliness is hidden, and we think that there's certain things that are pursuing us, physically or spiritually, or are governing us or ruling us. It's nothing but godliness. It's an illusion. But we don't realize it because we don't have the eyes to see. And that is part of the blessings of which we ask Hashem. We bless Hashem for opening our eyes, as we will soon see. So there is an arousal from above because we're not yet ready for it. Because what's the difference between sleep and wakefulness? Sleep is, we're the same person. We're alive. When I'm awake and when I'm asleep, I'm the same person. I haven't changed. The color of my hair is the same. My hands are, however tall, long they are, they're the same hands. They don't shorten when I go to sleep. The difference is my chushim, my talents, are in a state of sleep or lack of recognition. I can't tell when I'm looking at someone whether it's a wise person, talented person, an artist, or anything like that when a person is asleep. Therefore, that's a symbol of exile, where our true talents, spiritual talents and powers that lay within are hidden. And because of that, we lack that spiritual initiative to be able to arouse it because we're groping in the darkness. We don't know the way. Someone needs to turn the lights for us. Someone turns the lights for us, and we're able to walk through and navigate through the darkness. But when I'm in the darkness, I can't see. And that was happening in the exile generally, and in Egypt. The Yetziat Mitzrayim, the going out of Egypt, is the going out of the spiritual confines of darkness, of lack of spiritual understanding and clarity. And sometimes we're not able to do it on our own. We're just exiting darkness. When we're just experiencing darkness, we need that light. It's like a person is walking in the in a forest or in a field, and it's dark outside, and all of a sudden there is a lightning bolt, and that lightning bolt for a period of time illuminates that whole field to the extent that you're able to see, oh, there's the house. It's a split second, but I'm able to see, oh, there's the house. It's northeast. So I was traveling northwest, but now that bolt of lightning gave me that inspiration, or that light, and be able to have the ability to see and to direct myself to go towards northeast, towards the house where I need to go. Otherwise, it was so dark I couldn't see. So too, the Almighty gives us bolts of spiritual arousal and lights in times where we need it. And the morning is the time that we need it. And although we did not yet achieve the spiritual level and clarity of the Amidah, on our own accord, on our own steam, God provides it for us to allow us to begin the day, because we are just exiting the concept of darkness. And that's why we have the concept of 18 here as well. But that 18 is an arousal from above. It's given by God directly to us. And then now it's up to us to take that lightning bolt that illuminated that point in our lives, or where we are holding spiritually, and then direct our lives in a manner by which we reach the Amidah on our own steam. And that is the connection between the two 18 blessings, of both of them which reflect the highest name of God, the highest revelation, which is our objective. One of them is a gift from God to us, to allow us to exit Egypt, like it says that the Almighty took us out of Egypt. We were in Egypt. We were in Egypt until the Almighty revealed Himself and took us out of Egypt. For if God Almighty did not reveal Himself to us and take us out of Egypt, we were so sunken in the mire and the depth of impurity that we were not able to take ourselves out. Like someone in jail can't take himself out of the jail. Only someone from the outside can come and bring a sword, bring the key, whatever it is, blast the gates open. But I can't do it whilst I'm there. I'm bound. I'm limited. The Almighty took us out of Egypt, but after that it didn't stop. Then we had 49 days. 49 days by which we counted on our own and we elevated on our own spiritually to reach the level of Mount Sinai, to reach the level that we would be suited and fitting and deserving to receive the greatest revelation, the revelation of the giving of the Torah, but on our own steam. So too over here. When we wake up in the morning, it's like going out of Egypt. The revelation that God reveals Himself, pure kindness to us, to take us out of Egypt, to give us that lightning bolt of light, to be able to give us the inspiration to do what we need to do. And then we need to work hard to get to the 18 blessings of the Amidah. Okay, now we will get to the actual, we'll start with some of the blessings and we will finish them, the rest of them, next week. The first blessing is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, at page 15. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hanoten lasechvi bina lehavchin ben yom uben laila. First of all, the order of these blessings is generally the order by which everything occurs. So if we have a look, we bless the Almighty for giving discernment, or the ability for the rooster to differentiate, to have the understanding to differentiate, to distinguish between night and day. In other words, the rooster being that which is able to see the difference between night and day, and wake us up to be productive. We need to be productive. We've got to get up. And that point is the point of dawn where night and day join. Page 15. Page 15. Where night and day join. Just the first blessing, about 6 lines down. That's the first blessing. And that is when the rooster crows to wake us up, to begin to become productive. In other words, almost we have a call which is outside of us. It's almost like hinting to what we said before, the arousal from above, something that comes from outside of us, that awakens that which is hidden within us to wake up and to become productive. All of the blessings then are in order. Pokeach Ivrim, the Almighty, we bless the Almighty that gives sight to the blind, and then releases those that are bound. In other words, when we're in bed, we're bound. We don't have full control of our body. And then we straighten up. When we sit up in bed, we're straightening ourselves up. And then we clothe ourselves, because we don't get out of bed without being clothed. It's not respectful to God. In those days, people would clothe themselves under the blankets out of modesty. And the next is the Almighty who gives the weary strength. And the next one is we thank the Almighty for preparing the earth, spreading the ground over water that we can then step on, which is the next blessing. They're able to step and take our steps. And the next blessing is the blessing who provides for our needs that we can get on with our day. The next blessing is the blessing of who girds Israel with strength, and that is when we put the belt that divides between the upper part of our body, or the upper part of our lives, and the lower part of our functions, bodily functions, or the lower part of our being. And the other one is who crowns Israel with glory, that which we are commanded, or we have the custom to wear a kippah, etc. So they are in order. Maimonides teaches us that in fact you have to say them in the order that you actually, as you experience them, you have to then say those blessings. But the halakha is not like Maimonides. The halakha is that, as we mentioned initially, we get up, we wash our hands, we get dressed, fully dressed, we wash our hands, and we say all of the blessings. And if you heard the crow 10 minutes ago, you will still say the blessing after you wash all of your hands, and that is the halakha, and that is what we follow, and that we just, when we are prepared, then we say the blessings all at that point. Not as we get up, or as we open our eyes, and as we hear the crow, and as we sit up, and then step on the ground, etc., etc. So they are constructed in the order of how we wake up in the morning to thank God for the ability to do what we need to do. But every single one of this blessing has a spiritual component and symbol as well, and we're going to get to the first two today. The first one is, who gives the rooster the ability to understand between night and day. What are we thanking the Almighty for the ability of a rooster? If a rooster can tell the difference between night and day, and we're not talking about light and darkness, we're talking about just the very crack of dawn, the rooster feels it straight away. If a rooster can, then surely we've also been endowed with the ability to discern between night and day, or the symbolism of night and day being darkness and spiritual enlightenment. But the word sechvi is not only just chosen to thank the Almighty, have the rooster the ability to wake us up in the morning and become productive, or to recognize that there is a call that reverberates throughout creation always, that if we allow ourselves to hear, we'd be able to be awakened even in the depth of darkness, because before it begins to be light, it's the darkest of dark, and then there begins to be light. The word sechvi we find in Tanakh is also the heart. What is able to really truly discern between good and bad? It is the heart. So the word sechvi really, and according to Rabbeinu Asher and many others, it's not even talking about the rooster at all. It's talking about man's heart. And that's why if you never even heard the rooster, you should still make the blessing. Because we are thanking the Almighty that endowed man with the ability to discern between good and bad, between spiritual and corruption, right and wrong. And that happens in the heart. So where does it start from? It starts from Bina. Notice how it says. Have a look at the word. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who gives lasechvi, the heart, Bina, understanding. Lavhin ben yom uben laila, to discern and to distinguish between night and day. It starts with Bina, understanding. So remember, we've got the 18 blessings. 18 times 4 represents 72, which represents Chokhmah. Chokhmah, the wisdom that is the world is endowed with, and we are endowed with the highest realm of divinity, and our objective is to take that highest realm of divinity and to be able to reveal in the world. And then you draw it down to the next level of Binah, which is the letter Hey of God's name, which represents expansion. The Yud is a point. The Hey is expansion, expanding godliness by meditating and understanding and appreciating the kindness that God has given us. And then drawing it down, Lasechvi, to the heart. And as we will soon see later on, that is crucial, because it must extend not only to the heart, but extend to the realm of action as well, as we'll by the grace of God, see next week. Then we have the blessing of Pokeach Ivrim. Pokeach Ivrim is, we thank God for giving us sight. Pokeach Ivrim, opening the eyes of the blind. Literally, we thank God for being able to see. Not everybody can see. Thank God. Thank you. Utilize your eyesight properly, because the eyesight is very powerful. It says that there is something very unique about the eyes, more so than the ears. When you see something, you become one with that matter. When you hear something, you're not totally one with that matter, because what you hear has to go through your brain to understand it. But when you see something, you become one with that matter. What is more physical, would you think? Or what has a more physical dimension to it? Or what is lower, hearing or seeing? What would you think? Hearing or seeing? Seeing is lower?
No, higher.
Higher.
Yes.
Even though it's relatively on the same level, Kabbalistically speaking, it's on the same level, but nonetheless seeing, certainly from the order of structure of things in Kabbalah, seeing is much higher than hearing. And that's connected to the highest name of Ayin Bet, Ab, seeing. Hearing is connected to the next name, Sag, Samech Gimel. The highest level is in fact seeing. But hearing, even though it is lower, it is really not as tangible as seeing. When you look at something, you're actually seeing that actual physical thing. Whereas if I'm telling you what a croissant is and how it's made, and it's layers of filo pastry and margarine and thing together and a bit of chocolate in the middle, I'm explaining to you, but it's not as tangible as when you see it. So on the one hand, really, it would seem that hearing is less tangible, at least, than seeing. Seeing is more tangible than hearing, yet seeing is higher than hearing. Why is that? Because really that's our objective, to take the highest level and to unify it with the most lowest level. And that is why seeing, which is our higher faculty, actually becomes one with that croissant that I'm looking at. Whereas hearing, which is really a lower faculty, does not totally become one with that. So here we again see the concept of Ab, the name Ab, or Ayin Bet, which is symbolized in Kabbalah through the concept of sight or seeing, unites with the more physical. And that's the blessing we say, Pokei Ha'ivrim, God, thank you for opening our eyes physically, but also spiritually. To be able, how many people see but don't see? How many people walk by a poor person, they don't even see him and saw him? Did you see that guy? He was sitting on the corner there. Why wasn't he? He was there. He had a surfboard next to him, didn't he? Okay, good. You saw him, but you didn't really see him, did you? So too, we see things, but we don't really see. So we bless Hashem to give us the ability to actually see and empowering us to see. The blessing is not just thanking. The blessing is, in fact, that God empowers us to really see. The Torah tells us, I said before you, the good and the bad. God has to tell us. I said before you, the good and the bad. Choose good. The Torah has to tell us that. It's obvious. Why does it have to tell us that? Because sometimes we don't really see. We're spiritually blind. And therefore, the Torah empowers us, gives us the ability to see. And seeing is a very high faculty. We will continue next week by the grace of God.